do you think the world views the Egyptian monuments? Because I know that most world countries are fascinated by the Egyptian civilization, the ancient Egyptian civilization, and I thought that the French were the most fascinated people with the ancient Egyptian civilization. Am I right or wrong?
It's not just the French. Of course, the French are fascinated, but the Germans, the Americans, the British, everyone, the Japanese, they're all very fascinated by the Egyptian. They consider Egyptian monuments, ancient Egyptian monuments, world heritage, not just Egyptian, but it belongs to all humanity.
To humanity
in general.
Okay, what about the most important pieces in international museums?
I cannot single out pieces as important, but there are pieces that I personally love. Of course, I value all pieces, even what people would consider, you know, not very attractive, like the tools the ancient Egyptians used. But I love a particular statue in the Egyptian Museum very much, the statue of Seneb, the dwarf, who was in charge of the wardrobe of the king. What's special about it is that he was a dwarf, and he's represented with his wife and his 2 children. His wife was not a dwarf, and he had 2 children, and he held an important position in ancient Egypt. So it shows us that there was no taboo against dwarfism, and he could marry a normal height, a woman of normal height, and he has his 2 children, and they're a happy family. You can feel from the statue that it was a loving family.
يا مهد الحضارة يا بحر الكرم نيلك ده سكر وجوك معطر بدرك منور بين الأمم عظيمة يا مصر عظيمة يا مصر يا أرض النعم
It seems, Dr. Yasmin, that you have learned a lot from studying Egyptology and archaeology. So what is the story that caught your attention the most?
The story from ancient Egypt or an archaeological story?
Yes.
From ancient Egypt. There are many stories, but there's one tale that is interesting. It's known a text known as the dispute between a man and his Ba. And it's a story about a man who wants to commit suicide, and his Ba.
Ba is the soul?
Ba is loosely translated as soul, because there are different aspects of the soul. So his soul tells him not to commit suicide because death is not nice and life is much better. It's a very important text because it shows you that not all people were, you know, ancient Egypt is always depicted as this culture, perceived as a culture that's in love with death and obsessed with death. But they were actually in love with life, and this text shows you that some people were even skeptical about what happens after death. So just like today, there are people who are believers and there are people who are skeptical. Yes. So this text shows you that the skepticism.
Okay, but it is known that the ancient Egyptians believed in life after
death,
of course. and they they were preparing during their whole life for the journey to the afterlife, and they kept their foods and all what is going to assist them during this journey.
Just like today, most of us here in Egypt, for example, are believers, and we believe in life after death, but there are people who are skeptical. So, and sometimes you read texts that show you the skepticism. So,
okay, I understand.
And there's another text also that known as the Immortality of Writers, And it shows you that how much they valued writing, and they regarded that you know, writers are immortal because they leave a book that people could read after their death, so they're always alive.
The issue of documenting monuments, Dr. Yasmin, I would like you to talk to me about it. When did we start documenting our monuments? How important it is? How far is it important in preserving our monuments?
Okay, I mean, antiquities have been documented for a very, very long time, manually at least. So ever since the museum was opened, the objects were all documented in the register books. And our department, the Registration, Collections, Management and Documentation Department, is not the first department to start a database for the Egyptian Museum. But ours is the most complete. Our project was started in 2005, and it was a project that was managed by the American Research Center and funded by the Mellon Foundation and USAID. And the project was to train Egypt's first registrars and also start a database for the Egyptian Museum using very advanced software that's specifically designed for museums. But we became officially a department in the Egyptian Museum in 2007.
Okay. And do you think that Egypt benefited from this process of documenting monuments?
Of course, it did. Our work is very detailed. We track the location of objects in the Egyptian Museum, and each object has a history of its locations. We can track, like, you know, yesterday, where was this object located exactly in the museum.
And did it help in retrieving the stolen monuments?
Yes, of course, because we helped the curators in inventorying the broken vitrines in the museum, the broken showcases, and our department generated lists from the database of the missing objects with photographs and detailed descriptions and dimensions and everything. And these were the lists that were distributed to, you know, all the entities that needed these lists, like the police, the Interpol, UNESCO, ICOM, all these entities.
Okay.